Callie, President Barlow, and Brother Pike for their preparation. And particularly, I'd like to thank you for your sharing your revelations and inspiration as we've gone through the meeting. We're going to do a real quick audience stretch here. Then I'm going to have some remarks around developing spiritual momentum, and then we will conclude with President Moore talking about binding to act. After President Moore, we will then sing our closing hymn. I know it's a repeat, but Rise Up, O Men of God. We did that at Philmont, so we're trying to be within the tradition. And then we've asked Brother Ken Williams if he'd give the closing prayer. So if you wouldn't mind standing up and stretching, and as you do so, when we were at Philmont, Sister Wixom put this photo up, and she asked the question, what does this photo have to do, and how does it relate to young men? So sit and stretch, think about that, and then I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts?
So when I look at this, maybe there's too much realism in me. Like, I don't view that as being the plant made the hole in the asphalt. I'm thinking, how did that plant get there? I don't think it busted through. I think that there was already a hole there for some reason, and some seeds fell, and it started to grow there. What it made me think of is some of the young men that I've worked with in the past, don't come from the best homes. So they might not have a very supportive parents, and two that I've worked with didn't even have parents. And so that you're not always put in the best situation. You're not planted in the best ground, but you're growing.
Good. Any other thoughts? Right here.
It's obnoxious. It's always right where you don't want it, but it has the power to overcome, to get through the hurdles, to always be there, to overcome anything.
Very good. Very good. Go ahead.
I just thought, their true nature, who they really are, is under a layer of dirt. Whether that's physical or metaphorical, but it's there. It'll shine through. We seem to help that.
Good.
Sometimes as leaders, I think we wish for better circumstances or wish something was different. But honestly, if we sprout where we're planted, we'll be able to help the program as best as we can with whatever situations we may have.
Outstanding comment. Thank you. That was very good.
The young men sometimes feel all alone, just like that plant in the middle of the asphalt. You don't see any other plants in the background.
Yeah. Go ahead.
To pay for undergrad, I worked for an asphalt company, so this brings back bad memories. But something interesting, anytime somebody will go to seal up the asphalt or whatever, you got to take all the weeds out. And those weeds are the hardest weeds to get out. Lots of times you can't pull them out. You end up having to cut them and then put some kind of poison on it. So to me, tough circumstances build deep roots, and those roots don't move. And so if you can provide that for young men, don't kill them, don't put them over the edge, but you can make it tough, it'll make them tough.
Very good, very good. Thank you for your insights. All righty, thanks for your participation. We're going to talk about developing spiritual momentum. Sister Rosemary Wixom, who is the primary general president, has said, scouting contributes to a boy's preparation to hold the priesthood of God. Scout leaders have a sacred responsibility. They help boys learn scouting principles that also help them live the gospel. Two words jump out at me. What are those two words? Are there two words that jump out at you? Sacred responsibility. What does this sacred responsibility mean? This is the Lord's work, isn't it? To be spiritually called by His leaders to do this work. One of the most impactful messages that we learned and our 6 days at Philmont was the following. Sister Whitcomb taught us this. Teach a child today about what they will need to know 5 years from now. Let me repeat that. We need to be teaching our youth today what they will need to know 5 years from now. So, what do our primary boys need to know 5 years from now? 8-year-old boy just been baptized. What do they need to know today to prepare 5 years from now? What do our young men need to know 5 years from now? I want you to sit and reflect on that just for a few minutes. In your particular calling, your role, what are your thoughts? What are the things that we should be teaching those that you are entitled or entrusted to today and preparing for them 5 years from now? Once you've got some few thoughts, get in the small groups that you've been in before and kind of share your thoughts with one another. Some of their insights. You got really good at this.
For primary accountability, because as Cub Scouts, they don't have parents and team leaders like to track everything for them, and that's okay, but I think if we start teaching them as Cub Scouts to be accountable for what they accomplish, then they'll know how to do it when they're scouts.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
I think the greatest thing that we can teach our youth now that will definitely come into play 5 years from now is how to receive revelation. That they're going to be making life decisions, who to marry, where to marry them, whether or not to go on a mission, how they're going to act within the confines of the priesthood. And receiving revelation is going to be key to that.
Very good, very good. Thank you. What other insights?
I think one of the most important things that we can do, even from primary on up, is teach them to recognize the Spirit and how to bring the Spirit in. Because that's one thing that you don't really understand outside of the church, but having the Spirit in your life and knowing when to recognize it and act upon it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Here.
We want to make sure that people know how to, they know how to have fun, they understand what to do, but at the same time, they do have a priesthood responsibility, and they should act on it when it's called upon, be ready for that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anything else? Any other insights?
I'll share wisdom from Brother Flora. It wasn't my idea, but I love what he had to say. He's our Deacons Quorum advisor, and he talked about the primary boys learning how to build brotherhood, treating each other with respect, so that by the time they become young teenagers, they got that figured out, and they can build the quorum, they can reach out to those that are not participating with us, to learn that as younger young men.
Thank you very much. We're going to probably leverage that just a little bit later here in my presentation. Nice job. Any other insights?
I'll share.
Okay,
One thing that I was thinking for our young men is money, like how to use credit cards, how to build, financial independence in their future, because a lot of young people today are doing bad things financially to start their lives out. It's a really bad position to be in.
very good. Thank you. Okay, we've gone through this exercise on the young men's side. I'd like to do it now for the primary. I have an 8-year-old boy that's just been baptized. And I'm preparing him. What are the things that we expect that young man who's turned 12, what do we expect him to know, to have done, and to be? Think about that for a little bit. So those of you who are in the Young Men's Program who are receiving these young men, think about what you expect that 12-year-old to bring into your quorum. Josh? No, just spend a few minutes thinking about that. Where do you expect the 12-year-old young man to be in? What does he know? What has he done? Who has he be? What experience would you like them to have?
Want to be trusted.
Okay? You're ahead of me. Okay? Want him to be trusted? Okay? Go ahead.
From a practical standpoint, as an 11-year-old scout leader, I want him to be a first-class scout.
Okay?
This might be a little off topic, but I would like them, if by the time they're 12, if they know their parents have testimony, if they've had family home evenings, if they have parents who are engaged in the gospel and in scouting, we can work with that. When their parents aren't, it's a struggle.
Okay? Any other thoughts?
Sorry for speaking in your meeting, but I felt impressed. I think I would like for them to have had an opportunity to fail in a safe environment so that they can deal with failure and disappointment in a much safer setting than maybe one that's a little bit more threatening out in high school or somewhere else.
Thank you. Any others? Go ahead.
As a parent and a leader with a dog in the fight, I honestly don't care where they are whenever I get them at 12, because I'm going to teach them the fundamentals of the gospel, and faith, repentance, baptism, gift of the Holy Ghost, and teach them things they need. I can teach them how to tie a knot. I can't teach them how to tie a knot. We teach them faith. We teach them these scouting activities using gospel principles, so we can, wherever we get them, it doesn't matter. That's what we got, and then we just build up from there.
Okay? Oh, we got two over here.
I would like them to know, and I also have a 12-year-old son, like him to know his worth as a son of God, who he is, and who he can become.
Okay.
This goes back, actually, when we were talking about our next year, we were talking about allowing the opportunities for kids to teach, and it just struck me as the primary president, they need to be learning the doctrine in primary so that they are prepared to share that doctrine with others when they enter young men's, so that they can fully function on their forums.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm just going to ask a question to put it graphically, not to discuss here necessarily, but when you get home. So if you're a parent who has an 8-year-old child, 7 or 8, or if you're a primary teacher or priest advisor or whatever, and you know that that child, 7, 8 years old, is going to be exposed to pornography at age 10 or 11, what do you want to know 5 years before that? to prepare them to deal with that. Think about that. That should unsettle you. And think about moving to some solid solutions.
Okay, thanks, President. I'm going to look for some volunteers. I need at least two volunteers, and then I've watched this couple over here. I'd like to, would you be willing to volunteer? Yes, the two of you. I need two other volunteers. Okay, one here. Come on. One here. All right, then why don't you stand right up here? Please be on the line.
Doug,
Yes.
you'll hold the mic so the folks listening on the internet can hear, right?
I'll hold the mic. I guess I didn't need it, did I? That works. What do you pay enough attention? What do you see there?
A Cub Scout, a Boy Scout, a missionary.
Okay. Any insights beyond that?
Progression, yeah.
Okay. I want you to hold that up. I want you to hold that up. I want you to hold that up. See anything there? Okay, now it's your role. I want you to go. This is your husband, right? So put your arm around him. Do you see anything there? There's a progression, isn't there? Isn't that what we want for all our young men? All right. Thank you for volunteering. Yeah, that needs to be on. That would be great. Sister Whitsmith said, if we effectively implement faith in God, it translates over into duty to God. First of all, let me ask, who are all my primary people? Is one of you brave enough to stand up and tell me what faith in God is all about? Okay, I'll kind of put this in context, sisters. I've been in the Young Men's program for probably, well, way too long. Over 10 years. And I am not familiar with faith in God. So I really need somebody to help me understand what faith in God is. Actually, I did do some research, so I have in preparation, but I had no idea what faith in God was until about 3 weeks ago. So could one of you stand up and tell some of these brethren in the Young Men's program what faith in God is and what it's all about?
Well, thank you for warning me ahead of time so I could look at my faith in God, because I needed the refresher. But, you know, one thing that we always talk about how there are things that you can accomplish in your faith in God, in not just in primary, but also to receive a knot, your religious knot, for your scout shirt. But it also talks in the book not just about developing talents and developing your testimony, but preparing for the priesthood. And we've never really concentrated on that when talking about faith in God for boys, and I think we should. It's wonderful that they have a place in the Faith in God book for boys about preparing for the priesthood, because our leaders know how important it is for these boys to know and to build their testimony and to be ready to hold the priesthood.
Very good.
Thank you for that refresher for me.
You're welcome. So, Sister Dolan, I'm going to pick on you a little bit more. Tell me about some of the activities in this book. I mean, what I'm looking for is there a sequential thing, or tell me a little bit about what the young man does.
I mean, it helps the boys prepare for baptism. And it tells them about how they can get their Faith in God award, what's required. Learning and living the gospel is part of it. Serving others.
Okay.
A lot of
It's
this
kind of
is in
it's kind
scouting
of a
as
check
well.
in the box type of, I'm looking for this experience, I have this experience, okay?
Developing talents.
And as you went through the book, how do they suggest the young men work through this faith in God?
Gosh, you're being hard on me.
The sister back here, we'll take a spotlight off of you.
Yay.
How are they supposed to work through that?
The Cub Scout program is supposed to implement using that booklet and then with their families.
It says start with your individually, right? It says individual first, work on it individually first, then with your family, and potentially family home evening. And lastly, there are some activities in there that have a little square knot that say these are scout activities you can do as part of the den to earn your, I won't get it right, Faith in God award, right? So what does that sound like? Sound like a lot like duty to God, except at a more appropriate level, right? What I'm trying to get at is, the present picture we're here, we talk about patterns, and there's this pattern. And I tried to create that pattern with this little booklet, little program. So they start in primary with faith in God, move to duty to God, becoming a missionary. Who is really feels comfortable spouting out the methods of scouting? Anybody feel comfortable? Anybody? Fall back on me. What's that?
Uniform, high adventure, adult leadership, male leadership.
Close. Get the leadership development. Keep going. You're doing great. Give him a microphone. Let him go through that again. Adult association.
Adult association, yeah.
Advancement. You forgot them all? Now they put a microphone in front of you?
Phone a friend.
What's that? Phone a friend? Okay, I'll walk through them. One of them is uniform. So we start with the uniform at the Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and then you notice we do have a missionary uniform, correct? We start with, they call it a den, patrol, district, zone. See the pattern? Youth leadership development. Again, they start with a den leader, or what do they call them? The boys lead, and then again, patrol leader, senior patrol leader, trainer, district leader. You see the pattern? If you look at the methods of scouting, particularly the comment you made around patrol, what's so key in the Cub Scouts is that's the first opportunity that young man begins to work as a unit and learns how to interact in a unit for the very, very first time. Think about that. So it's very critical. So as they move into the scouting program, as Brother Crockett talked about, they've already had that experience. They know what form unity is. They've had that experience being part of it then and working together and learning to work through those things. So I go back to my question. If we effectively implement faith in God, how does it translate over to duty to God? It sets the direction, does it not? You want to add to that?
It's a stepping stone. So if they start doing this and we encourage them to work on it, and they're working on it effectively throughout their time in senior primary, then when they move on and they're a young man in the young men's program, they're already used to working on goals, and they're already used to working and setting things and accomplishing them. So that follows that pattern. They start out, they're getting used to it, they're very comfortable with it, and then they can move on and work on duty to God. And they're used to it, they're ready to do it.
So a young man, 12 years of age, entering the Young Men's Program, when he gets handed a Duty to God booklet, should that be a foreign object to him? It shouldn't, should it?
Another aspect of this is that it prepares the parent to take an active role in developing their son through his 8 to 18 years of age experiences, and for them to understand that there is a role for them. There is part of this that doesn't occur in the home and the family. And I think in my own service, I forget that piece sometimes. I need to help the parents understand that vision and how I can support them in that responsibility that they have. But it goes hand in hand. Faith in God and duty to God is the same kind of parental engagement involved.
I don't know, can you read that out there? What I put up here, this is out of Teaching No Greater Call. These are characteristics of an 8-year-old boy. And I'm just going to read a couple of them to you. Plays organized games that require physical skill, has good attention span, and wants to be included. Wants to know the reasons for things. Enjoys group play with simple rules. Prefers to be with those of his own gender in group play. Is more cooperative and less insistent on having his or her own way. Has a strong need for independence, but also relies on adults for guidance and security. Is receptive to gospel teachings, but may have questions about them. Is proud of his church membership, likes living gospel principles, and learns gospel through concrete examples and participation. Now, when I read that, that sounds like a lot like Boy Scouts, does it not? Is the Lord inspired? Well, is the Lord inspired? Is Scouting inspired? We've taken a program that meets their needs as a youth in that very formative time in their life and created a program to get them on this trajectory. And if we implement it right and meet their needs, it will take them on this trajectory, which will carry them through that progression. Does that make sense? You see how Cub Scouting is so very, very important? Oh, I'm walking around. They say I have to use the podium. The last comment that I want to make, again from Sister Whitcomb, gospel teaching needs to be a part of Cub Scouting. So Cub Scout leaders, I don't know if you take that perspective into your work, but do you see those as opportunities to teach and reinforce and strengthen gospel principles and help the youth learn those gospel principles and doctrines?
I mean, that's why it's so wonderful that the Faith in God booklet adds in that, not that the boys can earn as part of Faith in God, because it is to be part of Cub Scouting. They want the den leaders to be able to teach that. Gospel teaching does need to be part of Cub Scouts. And another thing that I hadn't really thought about before, but since you're talking about faith in God, and then duty to God, and then becoming a missionary eventually, the Faith in God booklet works with Cub Scouting like the Duty to God booklet works with Scouting.
Correct.
And I hadn't really thought of it that way before, but it does. And it makes sense that that flows seamlessly into Scouting for the boys, because they work on faith in God while going to Cub Scouts. So it makes sense to work on duty to God when they move on to Scouting.
So my last question to you is, have you ever had a young man join Scouting for the first time at, let's say, 15, 16 years of age? Is that challenging for them sometimes to understand what Scouting is all about?
So I'm a prime example of that. I joined Scouts at 15 years of age. I lost out on the primary. I lost out on the faith in God. I'm in a chapel on Sunday on a mission after being baptized at 20 years of age, going on a mission 15 months later. I'm there serving the sacrament, which I hadn't done before, previous to my mission, and I just pick a row, and the other deacons are like, "What are you doing?" I picked a row, man. You know? So those little things are important from first-hand experience. I'm training the way things are going because luckily I had good leaders to teach me correct principles and to get down the right path, but it wasn't without some effort.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. My next subject I want to talk a little bit about is anybody running a relay race? Oh, I got a lot of them. Who's brave enough to tell me a little bit about a relay race? 4x1. Tell me a little bit about a 4x1 relay race. Anybody?
In a 4x100, you have a baton and 4 members of it. And each member runs 100 meters and hands the baton off between each one of them. And that signifies when somebody stops and when the next person starts running. And
They have a certain distance they can do.
exactly 100 meters, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And they only have a certain distance they can hand the baton off, right? Correct? There's a foul and they have to stay in the lane and all that good stuff.
Either too early or too late. If you're too early, you get disqualified. If you're too late, you get disqualified.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, brother. So my question to the group is what are the critical success factors in a relay race? What are the critical success factors? Those of you who run relays.
Back in my much slimmer days. Probably the most critical thing was the exchange of the baton, making sure that the person that was being handed to had firm grasp for the previous person releasing.
Okay, very good. What else?
Now, is that everyone did their job. Doesn't matter if you're the fact of starting or if you're the anchor, everyone needs to run as fast as they can and do their best. It doesn't necessarily matter how fast you run that last 50 yards. The whole thing matters, no matter where you are.
Okay, good.
Well, I've never run in a relay race before, but it looks to me like momentum is a pretty important thing. Otherwise, you probably lose time. So having that momentum, I would think would be a really important thing so that you don't lose time.
Okay, good. Over here.
You have to see the person behind you coming and then effectively communicate with them to let them know what's going on. So the team has to communicate. It's great if you all run 8-second, whatever, but if they're not talking, it don't matter how fast you run.
Okay, good. Any others? Here's what we put together. Efficiently transition the baton. There's a window to pass that baton. There's timely execution. That strong first leg. Everyone is important. We brought that one out. Each phase is important. Communication and training. So those are all important in a relay race. So if I took those shirts again, are we passing a baton as we go through those different phases? So I would ask you on those exchanges between primary young men and from young men to military priesthood, how are our exchanges? One of the things that we learned at Philmont was about breaking down the walls. And oftentimes we get stuck in our, I'm going to call programming silos. I'm in young men's. I really don't know what's going on in primary. I don't know another, other than the young man shows up. He's 12 years of age, and he's now my responsibility. From a young man moving on into Melchizedek priesthood, what's that transition like? I have a young man who's coming up. Does he just end up in the elders' quorum because he's moved out of young men's? Would like you to think and ponder about the importance of that baton handoff as that young man moves through his progressional growth. Particularly the ward leadership. Do we do a good job of working together to understand each of those young men moving through the system or running the race? I think there's many opportunities for us to improve in those areas as we communicate and work and practice in helping that transition for the young men as they move through their growth cycle. So my final thoughts. Recognize the importance of faith in God. It is foundational. It starts the pattern. Number 2, encourage breaking down the barriers between organizations. There's such a powerful, again, in the, I'm going to call it traditional scouting program. How do you move from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts? The church is pretty easy. We know where our Cubs are coming, where our Boy Scouts are coming from. But do we make that transition smooth for them? Primary is key in developing that spiritual man. That is where it starts. You have a young man who is ready, willing to learn, in the right frame of mind, excited. Get him started down that path. Get him on that right trajectory. And then emphasize the gospel teachings bundled in their scouting activities. I want to leave my testimony with you. I know this work is true. I know that scouting is an important part of the Lord's work here upon the earth. And that we're about preparing our future generations to lead and guide the Lord's church. And I leave this with you in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.